Hi, and welcome to the second episode following on from the Trefil visit. And this is going to be a bit more in depth on processing the files. And I also done a little extra in terms of, I told you I was going to try. I did a little extra on, I've used my Imacon Flextight to produce a 3F, so it's .fff scan of actually this file here, this image. Anyway, that's not the file. I'll show you that later on. But I thought we could then do a direct comparison using my method of scanning negatives using a light box and my Sony A7R5, which works beautifully well. But I wanted to show you the comparison between a 3F file from the Imacon Flextight, which I thought might be quite interesting. And so the whole point of this now is to go through the files, go through the Nikon files, the Bronica files, the A7R5 files, and the iPhone files, and go on a deep dive to see what the differences are in the files, and hopefully you'll get a better idea of what each format and process offers, and will allow you to make possibly informed decisions about where you'd like to go, and also using I'm fortunate, and I've been doing this 40 years, and I've accumulated a lot of stuff, and so as a result I'm able to do these things. But I think what's important is that the kit you do have, and goodness knows times are tough, and we need to be able to still have our pleasure in producing imagery with what we have. And so I think hopefully that's what this is about, is making image creation accessible to everyone. So what we'll do, we'll get on the computer now. I'll do a screen record, and then with a voiceover, and we can go through the files and have a little deep dive and compare everything and see what you think of the differences. And as always, the questions are great, and the dialogue we're having is wonderful. So thank you so much for that. And I think I have answered everybody's. I've always replied to everybody. Please keep asking, and yes, let's see what this can bring. And I decided to do it in Lightroom, by the way. I thought Lightroom is most probably the most accessible software to everyone, so I thought we'd do it in that, and then we can compare stuff within Lightroom. So what we'll do, let's get on to the screens and have a look at the results from the Trefil trip, which, as I said, I'm going back. Anyway, let's get to it. What I thought we'd look at first is this one here, which is the Imacon Flextight scan from the 6.7 neg, and then the A7R5 from the 6.7 neg, and so we'll compare those and have a look. So first of all, let me just open up the A7R5 scan of the Bronica GS1 6x7 negative of this particular image. Now, if I just reset this a second, and I think I'll take it from scratch. So this is a Sigma 70mm macro lens, which is really excellent, an excellent lens for the Sony A7R5. And the neg comes in like this, I do a grey balance on the camera for the light box, but I always obviously desaturate. So you start by desaturating the file, and then do a crop. So I'll crop the file to the neg. And you can do a little rotate just to get it square, and then I want to get as much of the negative as is possible, because it's really, I don't want to crop hardly anything because I shot it as I wanted it. So we'll commit to that, and then you see the negative. And then what you do here in the tone curve, which is this one here, in the tone curve, I'm going to invert the curve. And you end up then with this. Now you can see here, it's obviously very light. So, and bear in mind here now that all the settings are inverted. So the highlights are your blacks, your shadows are your whites are your shadows, and your blacks are your highlights. So this here. And so what we're going to do on the curve, on the curve, I'm going to bring in, see to the toe of the histogram, and bring this one just here. So again, get to a contrast that a base contrast on the curve, on the tone curve, and then I'll put a center point. I'll just darken it down a touch here. So that's that. So we're getting towards a nice looking black and white. And then here's where I'll play with the contrast and the sliders, exposure, contrast sliders. So you can see if I go dramatic, you can see what contrast does. And I find, in the contrast, you're dealing with a raw file, so you're not losing anything here. It's non-destructive. So bring the contrast down so I can bring in, as you can see here, you can bring in the sky, and so you've got a nice tone in the sky here. And this is beginning to, as I saw it, with this range here in the sky. This is how the neg recorded it. This is how I saw it. And what I'm going to brighten up in the shadows here. So bear in mind, as I said before, the blacks are highlights. So because we're dealing with negatives, so you can see how the highlights are affecting the shadows here, the blacks. And there's shadows there. So I might just leave. Where are we going with that? That's okay. And then let's bring the whites and now the blacks, so you can see how because you're working in reverse here, and then the blacks and the highlights. So you got that there. And then with texture and presence. So if I just go on an area where we got that's not a bad area. So you can see texture, you can see what texture does. Be dramatic about it. So I'll just bring a bit of the texture in, so maybe to 30. What's that, 0? That's 30. And then possibly play about with clarity, not much. Again, maybe 15. And then all the way down the bottom here, you have sharpening, and we'll do sharpening around sort of 75. So I just do before and after here, which is that one there. Actually, you're seeing, you can see the negatives. Obviously, the before is the negative. And you can see what's going on. Maybe the actual, I think actually, sharpening's gone too far. I think we'll just bring the sharpening back a bit. to about 50. And you know, the scan is a sharp scan. It's a good scan. It's solid. And it's a great way of capturing the negative. And the format is outstanding. Let's just compare that now with the Imicon scan. So I'm going to reset the Imicon scan a second. So there's the Imicon scan. And we're going to do a similar sort of thing here. And crop in. And I'll just speed through this a second. So we're going to do very similar stuff, okay? Back to normal speed now, and as you can see, I've sort of brought it to where I thought. I'm not comparing anything here. It's where I'm thinking looks nice. So I'm not putting the other one side by side with it. I'm just literally doing it as I feel it looks good. And we'll just bring up just there, and yeah, so and we'll just do a bit of a sharpening on this. So I'll take it up, maybe zoom into this now. As you can see, the Imicon scan is a great scan. You can see by the dust and the dust and that it's very, very sharp. It's a very sharp scan. It's a very good scan, and I have to say, we'll put them side by side now, but looking at this now, without putting it side by side to the Sony A7R5, this is sort of maintaining the organic look of the negative. It's feeling organic, the grain structure and everything like that. So let's just put them side by side. Yeah, I was right. So on the right we have the Imacon scan. On the left we have the Sony scan. I've taken the Sony scan too far. It's as simple as that. There is a size difference. The Imicon does capture higher pixel density than the Sony A7R5, but I don't think that matters in this case. The resolution is not necessarily the big issue here. What the issue I'm seeing here is that the image on the left is looking digital. The image on the right is not looking digital. It's looking more organic. So I think we need to work on the Sony scan. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to swap around the scans. And I'm going to drag that into there. So here we have the Imicon scan on the left, and we have the Sony scan on the right. And I'm going to go to the Sony scan, and let's see what we need to do to match it more to the Imicon scan. So here we have now, so I'm going to take away the texture. So immediately that's looking softer, and I think I'll just get rid of the clarity as well. Don't need to apply texture and clarity. Let's just go back to sharpening. Let's see what we can do with sharpening. Yeah, I think sharpening is where it's at, really. This is a greater amount of sharpening, really. However, I'm just going to show you the... So you see here, there's more of a wormy type texture to the film grain, whereas the Imicon retains the smoothness and organic nature of the film grain. So I think there's too much sharpening Let's pull it back a touch. This is really interesting to see. There it is. Right. So far less sharpening. So no texture applied, no clarity applied, and the sharpening here is at 60, and I think it's feeling like the Imicon more. And then when you put them sort of side by side, yeah, it's interesting actually. I think actually the Imicon has a lot to offer in terms of a scan. We are pixel peeping here, and it's interesting that that the Imicon is my preferred scan here. However, I think it's possible to get. If we look at the out of focus distance, I think it's possible to get close. I mean, the Sony is very clean, and I think if you weren't comparing it to the Imicon, you would be very delighted with the Sony scan. It's only comparing it to the Imicon do you start to think, the Imicon has, as I said earlier, retaining that organic nature. But in isolation, the Sony scan is absolutely fine. And you'd be very happy with that as a scan. Yeah, I mean, I think that is very acceptable as a scan. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pause here because I'm taking far longer than I thought I was going to take, because I've been surprised by the quality of the Imicon scan. I'm not surprised because I've used an Imicon scan for a very, very long time. I've used an Imicon scanner for a very long time. But putting them side by side like this is revealing. I think you can agree. So I thought what we do next is I'll quickly skip through the other variations. So the A7R5 shot on location, not the A7R5 copy, the actual A7R5 with the Zeiss 16-35mm lens, of this shot, which is the color shot. The Nikon FM2, we'll have a quick look at that and the quality of that, and then we'll quickly look at the iPhone. Okay, so let's get back quickly to reviewing the others. Just quickly, I'll try and do it in 5 minutes, and then we'll come back, have a look at the prints, and finish up there. And then I'm sure everybody's going to have a number of questions. If there's something you think I should explore, let me know. Anyway, let's cut to it. Let's go on to the next part. So I'll tell you what we'll do now. We'll have a look at the Sony A7R5 shot, which I did at Trefil with the Sony A7R5 camera. So instead of a Sony A7R5 scan of a negative, we're now going to look at a Sony A7R5 image captured at the time. So let's bring that in. So there we have the color straight raw file, nothing done to it, no to make sure it's reset, to make sure it's all, there's no adjustments, all flat. And as you can see, the dynamic range of the A7R5 is absolutely amazing. You get this real texture in the sky, and it was a very, very overcast sky, but you're getting this texture, and the color's good. So what we'll do now, let's take this to black and white, and I'm actually just gonna in the first instance, I'm going to desaturate it. So literally take it to black and white. And you can see the resolution is excellent. This is the Zeiss 16 to 35 millimeter lens, and it's a very sharp lens. I haven't done any sharpening to it. I haven't put a lens profile on it. Is there? And then the lens profile is enabled, so that's with the lens profile enabled. So let's just bring this to here. Let's have a look at these in comparison to each other. So obviously the Imicon scan's larger than the resolution of the A7R5, but again, and this is interesting, I do think, well, the film is excellent. And it just goes to show how good film is. You put these side by side and you see, you really do see how great film is. So I'm going to work on the Sony A7R5 image a second. Let's bring a bit of sharpening in. Just 75. It's just a bit too sharp. So let's bring it back a touch, bring it to 50. Just to there. And then let's let's have a look at the sort of shadow area and what we're getting. Again, you're seeing here the resolution of the film is quite astonishing. It really is amazing. So I'm just going to open up the shadows slightly. Add a bit of texture. Add a bit of, don't want to add too much clarity. Actually, I'm not going to add any clarity at all. I'm going to reduce the contrast, actually. What I'm going to do, I'm going to reduce the contrast quite considerably, and I'm going to darken the image. That is, I mean, the thing about it is the fact that the A7R5 is an incredibly clean image because it has no grain. There's hardly any noise. Well, there's no noise to it at all. But interestingly enough, even with the film grain, and I know this was T-Max 100, so it was a very fine grain film, but even with the film grain, the film is looking more detailed than a Sony A7R5. And this is going to be interesting because I think what I'm going to need to do, is I think I'm going to need to borrow a medium format camera. And I've used to see what the difference with the Sony A7R5 is to a 100 megapixel Hasselblad or 100 megapixel Fuji. And we'll do an episode on that. But even a medium format Hasselblad and a medium format Fuji, the negative size is not even close to 645. So you're still, with physics, you're still getting out of the film camera a more interesting aesthetic than you would even out of a medium format digital camera. And there's something dynamic about the film I think you might agree, than there is with the Sony. I understand I'm in a slightly different position as well, photographing the image, but nevertheless, there's a grandeur to the Bronica which the Sony lacks. Again, it's to do with feeling. It's the feeling. And let's bring up the Nikon FM2 image of this same image. So this is 35mm film. So here we are, 35mm film. Now immediately, even though it's 35mm film, I still prefer the 35mm black and white negative to the Sony A7R5. So this is really interesting. I'm going to reset. Right, so I'm just going to go on to the. This is the Nikon FM2 with a 35 to 105 zoom lens. So it's a nice lens. So I like this lens. So I'm going to reset the file. Let's crop it, and let's just go to there. Put that there. So obviously slightly taller, different aspect ratio to the 6x7, the 5:4 aspect ratio. So let's just bring that to there. So let's commit that, and then it's going to slightly rotate the image as well. Okay, so let's invert the curve, take the base saturation all the way down, bring the top of the curve there, bring the bottom of the curve there, and just put a bit of contrast in there. Let's darken it. Okay, so this looks great, doesn't it? So you can pick up a 35mm camera for very little money. I mean, you look at my Nikon F801S episode, and all of a sudden you realize how cheaply you can pick up 35mm cameras. So what we'll do now, you can see obviously the resolution is far less, but we're zoomed in here. It's like but if I now just sharpen slightly, just go to sharpen and sharpen the image. So sharpen the film grain here. It's about 90, about 90%, I suppose. And so this is a scan. This is a scan of the 35mm neg on this Sony A7R5, and then we'll just play about with the contrast somewhat. Reduce the contrast there. So I'm going to keep some texture in the sky. But let's have a look at bit of clarity, but 10 plus 10 on the clarity, about 15 on the texture. Okay, let's put that side by side now with our control, which is fast becoming our control, is the 6.7 negative scanned on the Imicon. And so there we have that. And obviously there's going to be a resolution difference. Obviously you can see that's the difference between a 6.7 neg and a 35mm neg. So there you have it. There's the evidence for that. But, and this is also 400 ISO film, that's 100 T-Max. So it's not even really fair on the Nikon from that point of view. However, the aesthetic, when you do a full print and you're not cropping in much, you would be, look at them just full screen, just like that. They both look great. And that's, I think, that says a lot. That says a great deal. Okay, so let's do the same comparison now. And sorry, this is a bit long, but I hope you're finding this interesting. I'm finding it revealing. to be honest, is the truth of the matter. So, what we're going to do now, I'm going to drag in the iPhone JPEG. So there it is. This is the iPhone JPEG. And that's what an iPhone looks like. So, it's just a completely unfair comparison. But the point is, it's the image. Now, and the image, interestingly, in terms of presence, I think this it's odd how the presence of the subject feels more interesting than the Sony A7R5. So don't want to be disparaging the Sony A7R5 too much here, because it's my workhorse every day and it's a great camera. But for what we're looking at here, so what we're going to do, we're going to desaturate the iPhone. And the sky is really interesting. Look at the detail in the sky there. And I know this is to do with the AI algorithm, but it's quite impressive. I doubt if we can get much in the shadows back. I don't know. Let's reduce the contrast and lower the exposure slightly. Again, I'm not getting that organic feel which you get out of the film. The film just looks organic and fantastic, whereas the iPhone doesn't. However, again, in isolation, if that's all everybody has their iPhone or Android on them, and Androids do some fantastic cameras on there as well, and you take a photograph, you'd be very, very happy to go home and convert this to black and white and think, yeah, that's a really nice little shot. And you could have a little print made of it, nice print of it. You actually get a decent sized print made of it, frame it, and you've got some lovely artwork which you've created, and people would go, yeah, that's really great. So again, it's horses for courses, and I think that's what's interesting about this whole exercise. And I think we've learned a lot today. Actually, I know I have. I've learned a lot today. I'm mightily impressed with the Imicon. The scan is lovely. I'm just going to put the just to go back. There you go. So we have the iPhone convert to black and white on the right, and the Imicon scan on the left. So it's sort of as I expected. In print, as well. Here's two prints here. These prints, same size, same everything, and this one here is the A7R5 scan. This one here is the Imicon scan, and when I look at them closely in print, there's just nothing in it. It's the A7R5 scan looks great, as does the Imicon scan. There's no discernible difference. This is a darkroom print, so it's just slightly lighter, but this is a darkroom print. And when I look at these and compare them, I think it all stands up well. A darkroom print is fantastic, and it just goes to show that analog is great, and it works really well. Film still holds up fantastically well. I think I'm very happy with the scans from the A7R5. The Imicon is wonderful too, but there's a point to note about the Imicon. is that an Imicon scan, a 3F Imicon scan, takes around 18 minutes to scan it. So it's a considerable time. You would, if there was something really special I wanted to scan, I might do it on the Imicon. Everything else I'd happily do on the A7R5 because you're just not going to see a difference in print. And I think that's the case for, that would be the case for any digital camera using the method. As I said, the lens, the macro lens you use is critical, really important to do. But yeah, anyway, I think the Bronica, fantastic scan. The film works brilliantly. I thought the FM2 was interesting. I liked what I got from the FM2. The A7R5, you know, there's nothing to be said about it, really. It's a great camera and it works brilliantly, and you're never going to be disappointed with the results. The yeah, the iPhone, thankfully, the iPhone falls short. Thank goodness, because otherwise we're all a bit stuffed. But it does fall short. However, it's as I said, if it's the only tool you have and you want to go out and you want to experiment and take photographs and enjoy the process of creating imagery, because in the end it's to do with the composition, it's being there, it's experiencing something and wanting to document it or photograph it and then use it as a piece of artwork or whatever that you've created. Well, that's special. It's special because you've done it. And that's what this is all about. This is all about making yourself happy and having joy out of the process of creating images. And I think this little exercise has been interesting from a technical point of view, but I think ultimately it goes to show that, you know, you go out and take nice photographs and enjoy the process, then it's happy days, and you should be delighted that you're in a position to be able to do that these days, because we have so much choice, and choice is a great thing. So there we go. Sorry this one was a bit long. I think it most probably was worthwhile doing. I'm sure you must all have lots of questions you want to ask, and, you know, highlight bits and pieces which maybe I've forgotten to mention that maybe we want to review again. But let me know. Do any comments down below. Please like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon as well so you can get notified of updates and new videos. And you have a good week, and take care, and yeah, cheerio.